You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1 breaking news and stuff. Welcome to Midweek Missed Apex, where we were planning to round up the news and talk about Amanda Weaver's new F1 romance novel called The Fast and the Reckless. But since there has been breaking news about Daniel Ricciardo, we can just pretend that we're doing it for that. Matt, emergency news show, Matt Trumpets.
Indeed. The thing that no one thought would happen has happened.
Yes, okay. We are covering ground on very expected news. We've also got Christina Lee Mace joining us. Hello, Christina.
Hello. I fully expected this news to be announced in the middle of the night, so I would wake up to it.
Yeah.
It was very strange, but also very welcomed that I was able to actually react in real time.
Well, the real reason we wanted to chat, and we'll do that at the end of the Ricciardo news, is I think you've got a copy of the book we're going to talk about today. Have you? Have you got it in front of you? So I'll put it up on the screen. So there you go. It's called The Fast and the Reckless by Amanda Weaver, who has a podcast husband called Matt Trumpets. And so we're going to talk about it, try and encourage some of you to go check it out. It's been received very well, and it's in proper bookshops and everything. So it's not like just some muggy ebook. No offense to ebook authors. But obviously, with Matt here, we're not just going to slate it, but it does have strong F1 themes. It's completely around a PR person in F1 and a romance with a driver. I don't think that's spoilery. But we'll talk about the Ricciardo news now. So, Daniel Ricciardo officially out. This has been handled in the worst way possible. I think everybody was feeling incredibly bad watching him basically try to say goodbye without being able to say goodbye. And then the news pictures of the media there giving him a guard of honor back into the RB motorhome. Matt, this just could have been handled so much better.
There were many ways it could have been handled better, but from the reporting we have heard about Lawson's contract, this was much like the snap, an inevitability in this sport. And you just go back to, I go back to that test at Silverstone where they said, oh, he could have had pole position in the actual Red Bull. And I just thought to myself, no, this is, to me, this is a 1.5 year long Christian Horner, either wish fulfillment or PR exercise. And at the end of it all, the person who gets hurt are the fans and Daniel Ricciardo. I don't think it was necessarily fair to either of them.
Definitely not. We knew that, like, as mentioned, we knew that this announcement was going to be coming around this time if it was going to be happening at all. And somebody just opened their mouth, most likely, at the most inopportune time. And then all of a sudden, everybody in the paddock knew. And everyone in the paddock was like, well, I'm just going to behave this way. And then it just really did rob him of what could have been a really big send-off. And because it's Daniel from Red Bull, I really did expect that we would get him doing donuts at the end and actually being able to say goodbye. Not just some like poupée fastest lap where he doesn't get a point. He just gets to do one more qualifying type speed. And it wasn't even close to qualifying speed. It was fine. It was incredibly disappointing how the timing, we knew it was coming, but because we knew it was coming, they should have been better prepared.
It feels like there was no plan to tell him or to inform him. So to me, it feels like they were trying to keep it under wraps. They were trying to make it, we're going to make a decision and then we're going to decide in this autumn break. But, now put 2 and 2 together and you look at Lawson's contract where the report is that basically they lose him unless they get their 6 races in. And you can imagine Lawson's agent and managers are pointing very much to that and saying, look, we do have offers elsewhere. Lawson will definitely have offers elsewhere. But it was this sort of crushing storyline almost of him finding out his wife's cheating on him and everybody else knows except him. And then it slowly dawns on him, but he doesn't want to say anything. And it's all unfolding in front of the media. And then he's got that really tearful goodbye. And then I think he's accepted the reality by the end. But maybe they didn't quite confirm it. So he couldn't go around going, oh, do you know what then? And start sticking his fingers up everywhere because there was a chance that it somehow wasn't all true. But I asked for one thing. don't kill Pucci off screen. Don't kill Ricciardo off screen. And they've done it. And I think it's a really sucky way for his Red Bull career to end. But it might not. It might not be the end for Ricciardo. Surely there's options. Insert panel wildly speculating about options.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of obvious non-Formula One options, but you'd have to think, and this is like the timing of this gets even more bizarre because at the same time we're seeing this happen, we're also beginning to see once again, and I hate to keep dragging it back to this, we're seeing again Perez speculation, I think from Marco probably. So Ricciardo, if nothing else, could at least drive that car, has a history with the team. And if it's not going to be Ricciardo, it's going to be one of the two B-carb drivers, and you're still going to have to fill that seat with someone. Now that someone is definitely not going to be Ricciardo. So if Perez goes, what are they going to do? Again, it just like the whole thing to me also speaks of this sort of subtle disunity between Marco and Horner and the power struggles that apparently haven't fully been resolved at the team.
Well, this all started really unraveling, in my humble opinion, when Dietrich Mateschitz died. And all of a sudden, the chain of command is completely tossed up into the air. And like you said, Matt, they don't know how to handle this. They don't know how to neatly balance each other out, because at the end of the day, Marco does have more invested, more concentration on those young drivers. That is his area of specialty, and that is what he hones in on. So of course, those are the drivers that he's going to push for. And Horner, he actually works with the drivers once they're driving. So they're two different perspectives, both of which are very important to concentrate on. But goodness gracious, they need to learn better how to communicate with each other, how to get on the same page before they start publishing these things out into the wider world. But it also reminded me, I'm reading a book right now just on the history of Red Bull, and it brought up the situation of David Coulthard retiring and how he and Christian had that conversation that decided that Coulthard, yes, would retire, and here's the plan. Silverstone, they're going to make the announcement, go to the end of the season. But then Helmut Marko runs into Coulthard outside of the toilets and is like, it's your last race, and we're going to put Vettel in. To which Coulthard, very confused, has to go to Horner, be like, I think I've just been fired. And then they have to sort it out all over again. So this is a tale as old as time. How has it been 20 years of this team, and this stuff is still happening?
Yeah, no, I didn't actually catch that story, that bit of history ever. But I'm not going to read a book. I'm not that desperate to find out. You tell me more things about that.
Oh, eventually I will.
I think it's just too many chefs, not enough kitchen here, and has been for a while. And as long as Mateschitz was there, as was pointed out, you effectively had a chain of command that had to be followed. But with his departure, it's just been, almost as chaotic as last Sunday's Singapore show.
So I think it's like, how did Ricciardo get into this situation in the first place? But to end on where he could go, maybe like in F1, there's a few options. So, I mean, technically, there's still an Audi seat up for grabs, right? I think. And if you look at Stake F1 loving being meme lords at the moment, swap out a Bottas with a Ricciardo, that's a mini upgrade when it comes to the kind of memes and interactions. Bottas has been great, don't get me wrong, but they've got Hulkenberg coming in. And then if you put Ricciardo alongside him, that's going to be a bit of a killer social media team, isn't it? So good for sponsors. That might actually make sense for Stake, no? Is that crazy? Does that sound crazy?
No, I mean, but they're not really going to do anything anyway. You'd be interested to see if he goes to a rival team. I mean, he was at Red Bull for a very long time, and potentially he has a wellspring of knowledge that might be useful, particularly, you could see him maybe be a reserve driver at Haas, for example. That could be a useful thing for them. But mostly, I really think that his future, his short-term future is going to be in WEC or IndyCar. Or, hey, I'd love to see him in NASCAR, too. He certainly is possibly the most American of the drivers, and he's loved in the U.S. whenever he comes over here. So I don't think that's a problem for him. And if I'm remembering correctly, and don't quote me on this because I did no research prior to the show, I believe that one of the reasons he got to stay as long as he did is I think one of the main VCARB sponsors is his sponsor, and they've been putting a lot of pressure to keep him in that seat. So if he's bringing that sponsor that has a lot of money with him somewhere else, then yeah, we could see some things we thought were closed might open up again.
But he's such a name as well. So if you're going outside of F1, if you're a motorsport boss and you can bring in Ricciardo, then you know you're going to get eyeballs on it. So there is a rumor about him getting a phone call from 2311 NASCAR team, which I've just started just now. So I'm starting that rumor right now. But I did just DM Steve Lillette, the boss, and I said, I'm going to start some rumors about Ricciardo to 2311. And he said, calls will be made for next year by me, trust me. So I said I was going to leak it, and I have got permission to leak that. But yeah, look, people are going to go and watch a NASCAR race if Daniel Ricciardo turns up, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness. He would have a lot of fun with that. We would all have a lot of fun with that. It would be absolutely wild, chaotic. And at the end of the day, yeah, he is going to have to go somewhere else. Next year in F1, it's a very slim chance for him. Also, the way everybody is posting, we got a post from Alpine of his time at Renault back in the day being like, you're going to be missed. Everybody is posting as if he's just gone, gone, gone. Not he's lost his seat, but just he is
Good point.
Gone. Which, when you have that many people from across Formula One's informed community, people who are actively working with him and the people alongside him weekend after weekend, when that's the way it's being posted, it is very final. It is a goodbye. It is not a see you later.
Yeah, I think the whole motorsport F1 community maybe is, like, I've always compared this to prize fighting, heavyweight boxers. When you see a heavyweight boxer, or even like someone like Nassim Hamed, and you kind of go, these guys are burst on the scene, they're jumping in the ropes, they're knocking people out, they've got this undefeated record, people really get behind it. Once they start taking a few losses, the glamour kind of goes away, and people go, ooh, okay, so you take one big loss, so if we talk about Anthony Joshua, who lost to Dubois recently, you say, well, people are looking at Anthony Joshua now and they're going, as much potential as there was, this is one too many now. It feels like one too many big knockouts. And that's what kind of happened to Ricciardo in all these teammate mashups. He had a kind of TKO against Verstappen. So Verstappen really did show him up and do better and outbox him in that ring. And then, a couple of scrappy points victories against Hulkenberg, but then big knockout by Norris. And then you come in, you've got to beat Tsunoda. You've got to get up and beat Tsunoda. And he hasn't. And so he's not going to progress the Red Bull program, the driver program on. And I think now that kind of push and momentum behind Daniel Ricciardo's career, it's gone. So this is a big knockout blow, Matt. And I think people would not want him to get back in the ring now. And I think that's in a nice way, like in the nicest possible way. People don't want him to get back in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, the best you could say was that on occasion he approached Tsunoda's performance. But the interesting thing, and I know you like a bit of tinfoil, and there's no better time to discuss it than when we have 3 weeks off.
That's what people say. That's what you say. I like tinfoil. I'm just telling you what I reckon.
All right.
And
well,
you
reckon this. How many bad strategies has Ricciardo had in the past month?
Some.
At least 2 that I've noted. And not just me, people who are actual strategists have pointed out that he's had some weak strategies of late. And you do sort of begin to wonder, is that just an accident?
Oh, hello.
Or is that someone trying to give someone a tiny little push when maybe they're standing slightly too close to the edge?
So would a team ever affect a car's performance to suit their narrative or their driver contracts or whatever? Like, yeah, I'm absolutely certain that's happened in the past. You can't possibly say that that's the case with Ricciardo. Otherwise, they'd have had to have been doing it all for the past 2 years, because he hasn't looked like the better driver really at any point against Tsunoda. And you've got to go in and you've got to beat Tsunoda. I've got a little bit of a theory here that he's kind of ended up here accidentally. So when the McLaren knockout blow came he was out of F1. Like, it was done. The career was done. He came back into the Red Bull sphere as almost like a driver ambassador. You know, do you remember that, Christina? Looking back to he was basically just doing their TikToks and their memes, and that was a weird role.
It was weird, but you also knew exactly why he was there. And it's, again, one of the jokes that I absolutely love to say, but I'm going to say it until I'm blue in the face. If Christian Horner could have Daniel Ricciardo, Max Verstappen, and Sebastian Vettel as his Christmas card each and every year, he would do it. He would dress them up in matching sweaters and send it out to everybody he knows. And that's why he was there. He's one of Christian Horner's favorite drivers. Christian wanted to see if they could get him back to the place that he was. And it was the tiniest open door, the let's keep him in the fold, let's keep him in our back pocket for when we might need him. And I still to this day don't think De Vries would have even been replaced if Ricciardo wasn't there for them to put in. Like, they didn't have any other real options. They wanted Ricciardo in at that point in time. So he maybe wouldn't have lasted the season, but lasted a little longer. But it just, yeah, he was there because Christian wanted him there.
So if you want to carry on Matt's conspiracy, you go, well, De Vries' form suddenly hit a dip just at the time when they wanted to replace him. How convenient. I mean, you're painting a very Death Star picture of the Red Bull management, Matt. But they have been brutal with drivers. But they have
Are you just reaching that conclusion based on my words?
Yeah, only because of your words and actions. But like, if you list the drivers that they have just culled out of nowhere, you know, aside from, was it Alguersuari and Verne? They did in a
Buemi,
that was it. Alguersuari and Buemi at the same time just cleared out the driver lineup. They've done
Verne, don't forget him. Yeah. Another excellent driver. They just tossed onto the trash heap.
And then,
pretty big graveyard, yeah.
Yeah, but look at the mid-season dumpings. Kvyat, Albon, Gasly, all mid-season, right?
Yes, like clockwork.
Yeah, and then also De Vries mid-season. Like, this is a team that is brutal with their drivers when they change their mind. So I don't think any conspiracy theories are like massively off the table. They've definitely done more in that way. I can't see another team like culling 5 mid-season drivers in the last 15, 20 years.
But see, I don't think that makes it a conspiracy. I think that just makes them consistent.
Right. Yes.
If they don't like you, you're gone.
And they don't wait for an excuse.
No.
Yeah.
Just baby bathwater, goodbye.
So I think that's kind of that on Ricciardo, really. Unless you want to do much into, like, you know, his career, I think it's a well-trodden path. But, you know, he's been in F1 since 2011 with HRT. So that's going quite a way back now. That's a 13-year career where he's been being paid to be an F1 driver, has been consistently one of the most popular F1 drivers. Even at McLaren, he won Monza. He won the Italian Grand Prix. I think this is one of the definitely named characters from this era. When we look back in 20 years, if you watch an old race, you're going to go, Daniel Ricciardo. Yeah, those overtakes in Monza, last of the late breakers. You know, he's had some fantastic moments. Monaco wins. So it's not exactly like the saddest ending, but not everyone gets to be Verstappen, Hamilton, Alonso.
Yeah, and especially if you leave the only team that gives you the option of being that. And when he left Red Bull for Renault, everyone knew what that story was. That you could stay and fight, or you can cash that big paycheck finally
40 million,
opt for your pension.
Ooh. Yeah. Hard to turn down 40 million. My principles would disappear very quickly. I wonder how big an influence that was. The 40 million versus stand and fight against Verstappen. Or you go, I'm looking at Verstappen, looking at the data, and looking at the fact that the team seemed to favour him politically. There was that crash in 2018 in Baku where, Vettel was going through this massive weaving phase, which the rules have had to dance around for a long time. But basically chops in front of Ricciardo, takes away his clean air, takes away his braking ability on the dirty side of the track, and Ricciardo ends up going into him. And then Red Bull refused to blame Verstappen for that, is how the story goes. So if you're already on the fence and Renault come in with 40 million and we're definitely going to be the next Mercedes because, you know, you saw what they did, we're going to do that now. We've got a 5-year plan. We've got an ongoing 5-year plan, a refreshing and renewing 5-year plan. You can't fault that move. I don't think anyone can sit here and criticize that move.
Definitely not, but I do think in hindsight, he's going to kind of be kicking himself in the behind because how much money now do they make comparatively because of sponsorship, because of just all this money that comes because Drive to Survive was intensely popular, partially because of Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah.
I think that that's going to very much be a hindsight thing of, wow, I didn't need to take that really big deal in order to make bags and bags and piles of money.
True.
Dang, you can't see that kind of a shift coming. You can't see that kind of
You can't
change,
predict DTS,
still.
can you? You can't predict Drive to Survive with that amount of money coming in. But, like, what? Is he going to be at home, in Australia? One thing, he's in Australia, he's in the sunshine. And, like, if he is upset, if he is crying, he's wiping away his tears with, like money, just wads of cash, wiping away his tears. Oh, no, what shall I do? Oh, literally anything I want for the rest of my life. So that's what F1's, done for him.
Yeah, he'll just keep releasing Enchanté merch lines.
Okay.
5 a year, 6 a year, so many more that we can't even afford, or he'll just keep oversaturating himself with Enchanté. It'll be fantastic.
Well, good. I don't know. I genuinely don't know what that is. So I was trying to nod for long enough.
It's his merch line.
Oh,
it's
really?
very cute, but
okay.
There's too much of it.
So this is where, like, we need to tap into your knowledge, Cristina, like yourself as well. I think Antonia and stuff, you're a bit more on that side of things. Like, I had no idea of people's merch. It's not part of my world. Are we missing out? Should we do a section on the various sponsors and merch lines?
Merch has been getting better. I will say that. And I will say Enchanté, his line, was a pioneer in that. It has very fun themes, good colors, but like most merch by drivers, it is outrageously expensive. And he puts out a lot of collections, but merch can be very fun. I'm personally not much of a merch person. I just see it on socials, on the pictures and here and there, but it certainly is its whole own can of worms that you could spend hours talking about.
All right. Well, let's see if there's no more breaking news over this autumn break. I might shout you, actually. So that's what we reckon about Daniel Ricciardo being ousted mid-season. If you want to hear more things that I reckon, we're doing more things over on the TikTok channel. So follow us, Missed Apex F1 over there. We've been getting, don't worry, I've not been blind. Been getting the odd lesson from Christina Lee Mace here, and a really handy tool if when I do something wrong, go, why on earth are you doing that? So I have had proactive advice from a pro. You should also go and follow Christina's. It's Cristina Fast Cars on TikTok, isn't it? And there,
yes, Christina.fastcars. Don't be confused with the fake account that TikTok has still not taken down to me. It's very obvious which one's real and which one's fake, but I'm still annoyed.
Do they repost your videos?
Yes. They haven't reposted anything in a couple of weeks, but it's like 20, like close to 2-3 dozen of my videos are just up there. Re-uploaded with my profile picture and close to my same username. And TikTok is like,
that's fine.
I see no violation.
But they haven't done it recently, so with any luck, they died back home on the way to their home planet. But where my TikTok videos are things I reckon, and you can argue with me, Christina's are informative, things to look out for the next Grand Prix, genuine breaking news and stuff like that. So at Christina Fast Cars, Matt doesn't have a TikTok because he doesn't really know how to press record and anything. So he's just here. So the replacement, Matt, Liam Lawson. Is Liam Lawson going to he had 4 or 5 races in and everyone thought he was brilliant and he looked great. Tsunoda at the same time had some very poor races during that same period. You've got to come in. Tsunoda's got this thing now. He's got this kind of reputation where you've got to come in and beat him. But he's seen off De Vries. He's seen off Ricciardo. Maybe he sees off Lawson.
Maybe he does. I mean, you'd think regression to the mean would give Tsunoda a significant advantage here over Lawson, at least to the end of the season. Once you get through testing and next season's car, which will be different, maybe that reduces some. But if you're Lawson, you don't have to beat Tsunoda. You've just got to do better than Ricciardo. And I think given what he showed us last season when he substituted for the injured Ricciardo, I don't think that's going to be all that much of an ask from him. Because we're coming in...
Go on.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, go on. No, I just think you're wrong about the expectation level. I think the expectation level is he comes in immediately and immediately beats him. I think that's how much it's been hyped. If he doesn't, no one's giving him a bedding in period. Yeah, I think it's been hyped so much that if people are going to be disappointed if he's not immediately on top of If he doesn't pull a Colapinto, because I'm afraid Colapinto has raised the bar for jumping in mid-season, that's the bar.
But Colapinto hasn't beaten Albon. I mean,
he beat him in Singapore.
Albon retired in Singapore.
He was ahead.
Overheating
was
power
ahead.
unit.
Who was
Albon
ahead?
still out-qualified him. He did beat him to the first corner. I'll give you that, but he didn't beat him for the whole race.
I think I had that
Albon
little
retired.
thought that overheating thing actually saved Albon a bit, just from one little data
but
point.
That would also be the first race where Colapinto had a better race result than Albon, and he's never out-qualified him to my knowledge. So Colapinto looks great. He looks way better than Sargent, but he's not showing Albon his heels by 0.3 in qualifying or anything. No. So I think there's, maybe we should set it this way. There's the team's expectations for Lawson, which matter the most. And then maybe there's the fans' expectation for Lawson, which may or may not be the least bit realistic. The thing I will say that is interesting to me is that we are coming on to, it's only interesting to, I only ever talk about stuff that's interesting to me. I really don't care about everybody else. The thing that's interesting to me is we're finally coming into a stretch of races that he's already done in this car. So he does have a bit of an advantage, a bit more of an advantage than a straight up rookie would normally have. Disadvantage, he's been out of the car for 9 months. So, take your pick.
Also disadvantage, he's coming in on a sprint weekend. That's COTA. Triple header and then triple header. So... And another sprint race is sprinkled in there somewhere. I don't pay attention to where they are until they're right there in front of my face. But it's definitely a big ask, but it is good that he's been in the car before, and he's been with the team the entire season. He's been going to pretty much every single race, whether that be with Red Bull or with VCarb. So the expectation, I think, is very high of him compared to anybody else that jumps in because he's done it before. He's been with the team. It doesn't really feel like him jumping into the seat. It feels like him kind of just shuffling back over from where he was sitting right over there, already half a cheek in that seat, and just whoop, 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 whoop.
What is happening?
And there he is now.
Have you been hanging out with Kyle?
What's going on? Like, after the chaos of the weekend and whatever that half a cheek was, hey, at least tell me you don't have a poem about Liam Lawson and I'll be happy.
Poem?
You didn't watch the Singapore race review. You are lucky. You are like Christian Pedersen had a poem about Daniel Ricciardo. Look, there's a lot of people, by the way, I have had so much incredible feedback for Sunday's show because it was utter chaos and I did completely lose control of it. However, that is like having a delicious double stack ice cream with chocolate sauce. We are not going to be doing that regularly. We are back to broccoli, pasta, just meat and veg, because then when the ice cream comes along, you'll enjoy it more. Those two are also barred for a significant amount of time. Right. For me, the question now is, what is the aim of the Red Bull driver program? So you want Lawson to come in. You want to see him beat Tsunoda because for whatever reason, they're thinking that Tsunoda isn't it. They didn't want to keep Tsunoda because he's doing the job. He's being a good benchmark, but they don't seem like they want to promote him up the grid. However, the rest of the F1 grid now know that Tsunoda's a viable option. He says he's had talks with people, he's had offers, he's had people wanting to speak to him, and I think that's correct. He has shown completely that he is a driver that can hold his own against people that are fancied more than him. Yet they don't seem like they want to promote him, and he does look destined to maybe be the Honda partner once Alonso retires in 2040. So this really feels like there's a lot on the line for Red Bull now with Lawson. Like, Lawson is the replacement plan, right? He is the next Verstappen in the eyes of Red Bull. So if he doesn't beat Tsunoda, what do they do? Actual question.
Actual question. Well, they have still a relatively big Red Bull Junior program. They've just been doing a really horrible job at shuffling people up. And you do have to wonder, what are you guys doing differently? Before, you guys were really great at bringing people up from the junior level, putting them into that secondary team, getting them prepped, and then bumping them up. And we've been in such a bottleneck for so many years. And then they went through that period of pretending that VCarb wasn't their secondary team, wasn't where they were going to send people to prepare them. It very much feels like they need to get somebody new into their leadership, somebody with a bit more of a, oh, it just feels like they're kind of bogged down. It feels like Horner and Marco have kind of just got set in their ways. They're not really wanting to think too much about the future. It feels like almost they're stuck just enjoying having Max there and enjoying his success, as opposed to powering forward and thinking, right, we have somewhere to look forward to. So they either need to bring in somebody new to their leadership team who's going to help balance the two of them out, act as a mediator that Mazicic was essentially doing anyway, or
I think that can't happen, though. I think
no,
they're not employees in a traditional sense, so they can't just get new people in. They're factions in a war. It's like Rome, and Marco's like the Brutii, and we've got the Skippy eyes of Horner, where they've all got their stakes. It's not like you can just replace one. One of them's got to just like fully conquer and murder the other one, which it looks like that was happening with all the Jos Verstappen stuff. It looks like they were teaming up to try and encircle Horner in the Senate and stab him in the back, and then it hasn't worked. But I think they genuinely could be in a little bit of trouble if they are indeed going to be losing this world-class champion in a couple of years. It looks likely. Horner had a kind of semi-desperate attempt to stir the pot back by suggesting that they would be tapping up Russell at the end of 2026, and you go, that's not the same. That hasn't got the same impact. And then Wolff's made some statements like attacking Christian Horner for it, but you go, mate, no, you have just spent the last year flirting with Verstappen. You absolutely have no moral high ground to stand on there. But I think, Verstappen's gone. They might have just been forced to hang on to Perez, knowing that they're getting rid of Ricciardo, because they had to replace Ricciardo or Tsunoda to bring Lawson in for this contract thing. They didn't want to replace it by promoting someone up if they don't think Tsunoda's long-term at Red Bull. They didn't think Ricciardo was long-term at Red Bull. So really, it was dump Lawson straight into Red Bull that they didn't want to do. So now it's looking increasingly like they kept Perez because they don't really have a choice. And then we're going to look at maybe Lawson for 2025, 2026. I think they could be in trouble, Matt. I don't think their driver program's working.
Well, I don't know that it's not working. I think they do still have some talented drivers in the pipeline, so to speak. But I think you're correct. They do have a bit of a short-term crisis now that Ricciardo hasn't worked out the way that maybe we could say Horner just really wishfully hoped that he would demonstrate enough to let him move back to the top team so they could gently get more consistent results out of the second car. I'm not even going to say that he's necessarily a better driver or anything, but where they have struggled and where they have lost now the Constructors' Championship is the inconsistency of the second car compared to the first car. That's just the results that are there. But you're right. The short term, they do have a problem, which is they need one more driver they can really trust. And for whatever reason, they're concerned about putting Tsunoda next to Max. Now, maybe that's going to be a next season, single season shootout going into 26, or maybe it's contractual with the Honda, like you say, and off to Aston he goes, and some new junior drivers will come through.
I've just got a message from Megan Schuster from The Ringer. And I hang out on there as well, The Ringer F1 pod. And Megan's gone, he should just show up in Austin and just act like it's his goodbye race, and also asks if I'd be willing to just pretend that he was still racing and that was indeed his goodbye race. For a driver that I'm never really been like an active fan of, I do find myself feeling really strongly that he deserves so much better from the sport. And Taruga in our Patreon chat says it would have been nice to have seen Daniel leaving Kota on horseback while doing a shoey into the sunset. Do you know what I mean? There was so much for a Ricciardo who came to the grid happy with the knowledge on a race weekend. This is my last race. Why didn't they do that? This is my last race. Do you know what he'd have done? He'd have been hurting, but he'd have been there with a Cheshire Cat grin. He'd have soaked it all in. He would have been talking to everybody. He'd have done media for everybody. Probably would have been on a horse with an opportunity. There definitely would have been some shoeies. Instead, we had to watch him process it, the end of a chapter of his life, watch him process it in real time in front of the cameras without the actual knowledge that it was definite and final. I'm angry. I don't like it. Don't do it again. They definitely will. Okay, here's a viewers' discretion, if the kiddies are watching, you might want to think about whether you're going to continue in current company, listening to this next segment, because we're going to be reviewing a book with adult themes. And it is Amanda Weaver's book called The Fast and the Reckless. And it's Matt Trumpets' wife. So it's probably going to get a good review, but we are going to do a non-spoiler review here. And by we, I most definitely mean you two, because I did open the copy I got signed by Amanda in Brooklyn, and I flicked in a couple of pages and I went, oh my goodness, I'm probably not going to read that book. But it's a whole genre, Cristina, so you might need to sort of brief us on the genre of romance, of a genre which you consume.
The genre of romance, what does it entail?
Yes.
I thought it was fairly self-explanatory, but for those who don't know, sometimes two people like each
They
other.
Okay.
They like each other and they really want to spend more time together, but there are tensions.
There's
and
problems, obstacles.
They have to talk about their feelings and then not talk about their feelings. And then you wonder, will they, won't they? But because it's romance, you know that eventually they will get together,
happens?
Have a great time. Yes, that is the contract, the obligation that you enter into when you read a romance novel. It might be bumpy along the way, but they always get together at the end. And that is not a spoiler. That is just how things go with romance novels. And that's the nice thing. There will be tension, there will be drama, but
okay.
You know, it'll be okay.
Is it an HEA? They get their happily ever after? Is that I've heard that
sort
term.
of, yeah. It ends at a good ambiguous point where they're happy in that moment.
Right, okay.
At the very least.
I learned that from reading Bridgerton reviews. So I think that's the closest I'll ever get to reading a romance novel. But Matt, what a spectacular time to be Amanda Weaver, because this book is in bookstores. It's all proper and everything. We did the book signing. So I got the signed thing. That went brilliantly. So congratulations to Amanda. We will get her on for a chat. But how's things in the Trumpets household now it's been launched?
It's very exciting. There was the interesting wrinkle that I believe it was Barnes and Nobles didn't actually have it in the store in the US when it was supposed to launch. But it was in Canada, you'll be happy to know. But it's been mostly the rollout has been as expected. She's been getting good feedback. People have been sending her pictures of her book in actual bookstores. I think there's a couple of places in New Jersey that want her to come sign copies. So it's been about as good as you can hope for. The problem being here, especially with publishing, is it's just a giant black box. We have no real idea how the book sales are going. It's just sort of like, well, we hope it's all going well. We did everything we could control, and now it's down to sort of the marketplace and, you know, who tells their friend about it and stuff like that.
Well, let's tell our friends about it. Cristina, you've read the book. Is it any good? If it's terrible, don't say.
It was a book that I finished in a single sitting. I started reading it in the morning with my coffee at a coffee shop. Then I migrated to the beach, and then I migrated back home. And it was a full day of just, I guess I should get up and move because my knees are sore. But gosh darn it, I'm not going to stop reading this book because it is so good. It very, very captivating, very engrossing. It has two main characters that, you want them to get together, but you're also on personal journeys with them.
In F1.
So it's not just, yes, in F1.
Yeah.
That's also the fun part for F1 fans. Yes, this book is within the world of Formula One, and it's fictional enough. Enough has been changed about who the teams are, their team principles, what the calendar is, that you don't feel this fan fiction-like vibe sort of hanging over your head that I think some of the other F1 books can sometimes fall into. You do feel like you're just in a parallel timeline almost, where things are the same but different, which is really nice. Overall, absolutely loved it and recommended it to people already, and they have already read it, and their reviews coming back are also read it in one sitting. Absolutely love it. Yeah, I have one friend who was very excited about making she's a Formula One fan and a romance novel fan as well. She, and my Canucks bestie, she made a special spot on her bookshelf that has the book front and center with a little Formula One car next to it and everything. So joy all around with this book for sure.
Matt, you were the F1 consultant for the book.
I was indeed the F1 consultant for the book, more like a research assistant, really. One of the things about the book that I was really curious to get your take on is I know from watching her go through edits with her publisher and with her editors that a lot of stuff would come back. And this is a Formula One novel for people who are romance readers. And so always the question for me was, how was that going to translate to people who are already embedded in the Formula One world? Like, so I always thought it was like, there's going to be a romance score, which obviously she's done very well on, according to you, and you are the authority on all romance now, as far as I'm concerned. But then there's also going to be like sort of the racing, the Formula One score. Like is there enough authenticity in those scenes to satisfy someone who's coming from a Formula One world who also likes romances?
Ooh. The first time reading through one of the racing scenes, it felt very strange, mostly because you're so used to watching it on television. You're used to hearing commentary.
Right.
So it's a very strange place to sort of be in, especially when you read other Formula One books where it's history based. So they're very much just telling you what happened and not necessarily giving too much of a narrative voice to it. Whereas with this one, it wasn't so much about what is actively happening on track. It was about how does that make the team feel? Are they tense about it? Are they worried about these particular things? And that was what was really well done, is it pulled you into, yes, there's F1 stuff that is happening, but this is how you should feel about it. And that was good from, somebody who watches Formula One. You hear, oh, we're worried about the pit stop window. And you know the kind of emotion that that feeds into you. But then it also heightens it because you have that narrative voice. You have a character that's thinking about it, that's concerned about it. And that pulls you in even more deeply. So it was very much getting used to hearing it from these characters' perspectives as opposed to the voice of a commentator. But once you got through that and settled into, okay, this is how we're thinking about racing in this moment, it was lovely. It got your tension up and you were worried about what race result are we going to get? Are we on the podium or not? It was very well executed, yes.
Okay, so we're invested in the sporting side, even though it's a romance novel. Like, without spoiling this bit, is there like a team or a driver when you're reading this that comes to mind and you go, this could kind of be Alpine, or this could definitely be like Stake, or at the back of the grid struggling? Or did it feel like a brand new concept?
It definitely, the team it reminded me most of was Williams, mostly because you have that family aspect of it is a family-owned team and they are rebuilding-ish at this point in time. So you have that, but aside that, it doesn't really remind me too much of any team in particular, which I think is great. You see these bits and pieces, these little moments where you go, oh, that definitely could be something from the real world, but it's these such small bits and pieces that it doesn't really take over your mind. Again, it does not feel like it's anywhere close to fan fiction, essentially. It does feel like pure fiction, just set into something that is quite familiar.
So I think I did say this at one point or another, but for all of the racing that happens that we see on track, there is always the nub of a real incident that it was based on. And I'm curious if in your reading of that, if that ever came through to you, or if you only know that now because I've told you about it.
There were definitely some instances where I was reading through it and sort of I was trying to stop myself from doing that, but I could see in my mind, I remember watching that race. I remember watching that incident. I remember seeing that in a highlight reel. So there were definitely certain moments that it recalled times in F1 history, but for the most part, I was very much trying to enjoy it for its own thing, even though I knew the best way to make something like this, where it's both immersive and its own independent story, is to have that inspiration from real life. So very nicely balanced on that front.
Well, the fact that you read it in a day is very encouraging. It means it's readable. There isn't actually that much fiction specifically around Formula One. So like an engaging story about fictional characters in the background of Formula One. Maybe I can get you guys to like highlight certain pages where you just go, Spanners, just go to page, like a choose your own adventure book. Just go to page 42 now. The date went very well. And then I can just skip past it.
So one thing that's very big, I know in the romance community, this is going to seem strange for me to bring it up, but because we're a spoken medium, as in addition to being on YouTube, tell me a little bit about how you reacted to the cover, because I know Amanda was super excited about the cover.
Well, book covers for this genre are very, very important, aren't they? And you should always judge a book by its cover.
Well, romance novel covers fall into, well, three sort of categories. You have, this isn't really a romance novel, it's just a raunch novel. And that's where you have just two incredibly attractive people on the cover being there, existing as attractive people. You have the cartoon covers, which is it feels very strange that you're picking up something with a hand-drawn doodle sort of a thing, and then you know what's in there. And then you have a bit more of a mature take on it almost, where it's like Amanda's cover, which it has your two main characters and then a nice little car. I like the font choice very much.
It's like a essay.
I think the hardest part for me with romance covers, or what I just dislike in general with book covers, is when they put people's full faces on it. Because when you're reading fiction, you like to have the description and then envision what the character is like yourself. So that's, in general, the thing I would say I dislike the most, that just books in general will do, is give me a full face for somebody. But I do like this one. I like how it's the gold coloring, because, winners get the gold type of a vibe. I like that it didn't have any checkered flags, because I do think that's a bit overdone. But overall, I think it's distinctive enough from all of the other covers that have been made for racing novels. And it's really nice. It looks nice on a shelf.
It matches your headphones as well. I need the big faces because I have aphantasia, so I can't imagine anything. But thanks for reminding me of that. Oh, why don't you just imagine things with your functioning brain? Matt, final points on this book. Get people through the door, and we'll do a link to buy it, presumably available internationally. What's the elevator pitch, Matt?
Elevator pitch is simple. This is going to be the most authentic Formula One romance on the market right now. The dialogue in it will absolutely crack. It's spicy enough for those who are looking for that. But even if that's not your thing, it's not, this is, as Cristina said, this is not a raunch novel. This is on the edge of what you might have once upon a time called like chick lit or women's lit. It's relational, it's story and character arc driven, and is, well, obviously, in my opinion, really well done. And I think I could say the same for Cristina.
All right. And you were the consultant for it. So I just want, in case you think there's going to be a lot of like tire stuff, I did specifically ask Amanda, did you reject any ideas that Matt gave you because they were too boring? And she said, and I quote, so many. Not some, not a couple. She rejected so many of your ideas because they were too boring, which makes me and her very similar people.
And Matt still got the little dedication in the cover. For anyone who is wondering, it says, for Matt, always, because they're the cutest.
Oh my gosh. And they've been together 100 years. So there you go. Go and buy Amanda's book so that Matt can retire and or buy a Ferrari. But also let's throw the Mistake Apex community behind it. Leave good reviews. Did you say is the reviews on Amazon?
Yeah,
is that
please,
the big thing?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Goodreads. Just leave the more good 5-star reviews you leave. It's not really too different than Missed Apex in a lot of ways, which, by the way, leave us some good reviews too, please.
Yeah. Oh, no, please, actually, can you please leave us iTunes reviews? Because there's been a few mean ones. And I normally say, hey, guys, we've had a few mean ones. Leave us good ones. And I keep forgetting. But iTunes reviews massively, massively help. But right now, we are just so excited. We've been waiting a long, long time. And this is the culmination of a life's ambition for Amanda as well. And just, I'm so pleased that it's being received well. Go and read The Fast and the Reckless by Amanda Weaver. Thank you for listening to our midweek drop-in here on Missed Apex podcast. On Sunday, I think we're going to throw out the three of us actually went to Watkins Glen. Cristina survived again, hanging out with Statler and Waldorf. But we have got the video coming out of that. There's some really good interviews. Juan Pablo Montoya was there, spoke to us, and we got to speak to loads of people in the team and lots of good stories about Watkins Glen, including a little bit about its F1 history as well from old boy Bill Green. Sat down with us for a 45-minute chat. But you know, we don't have time to do a full chat of everyone, but there's loads of good stuff in there. And then I think we have got loads coming up in this little autumn break. We've got a new friend to meet in the week, and we've got the rest of the crew lining up with F1 topics to keep you entertained on your commute all through this autumn break. Until we see you next, follow the panel. Until we see you next, follow Matt at MattPT55. Follow Cristina, who is at Cristina Fast Cars on everything, just about.
Yes, and Christina Lee Mace if that first one doesn't work out.
And follow me, Spanners Ready. I'm getting better, partly because of Cristina, at Instagram, getting things up on Instagram, going on TikTok to basically use it as a spoken version of my Twitter. So Missed Apex on there, Spanners Ready on Instagram, Richard Ready on Facebook, and at Spanners Ready on Twitter. Until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and press the right bumper. Work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast. And subscribe to the YouTube. Subscribe, please. I keep forgetting to do that. Subscribe to the YouTubes and the TikToks and all the things, please. It really, really helps the metrics. And like it. I think I got it all. I'm good at this. I'm really good at this.